Jungkook stepped out of the storage room with a relaxed stride, his eyes immediately searching for Yin. She stood not far away, busy fixing her messy hair, her face still slightly flushed. A small smile tugged at Jungkook's lips as he took in his wife's shy expression. He walked closer, deliberately standing nearer than necessary. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Yin nodded quickly, avoiding his gaze. I'm fine." Mina, who had just exited the storage room, giggled at their interaction. "Oh my, Yin, your face is so red. What exactly did my brother do to you in there?" she teased. "Mina," Yin protested, her face turning an even deeper shade of red. Jungkook shot his sister a sharp look. "If you don't want me to actually punish you, I suggest you shut your mouth." Mina raised her hands in surrender, though her mischievous smile remained. All right, I'll be quiet." Jungkook locked eyes with Yin, refusing to look away even as she grew more nervous. Then, in a deep, steady voice, he asked, "So, starting tonight you'll sleep in my room, right? Not in Mina's anymore." Yin froze at his question. Her cheeks heated up instantly, and without thinking, she stole a glance at Mina, who stood nearby. Mina only shrugged, making no effort to help or rescue Yin from the situation. If anything, she seemed to be holding back another teasing grin. Yin bit her lower lip. She had already promised Jungkook, so after a moment, she nodded slowly. Yes." Jungkook's lips curled into a satisfied smile. "Good," he murmured, his fingers casually reaching for her hand, intertwining them with his. "Then, let's go to our bedroom." Yin gasped. "Right now?" Jungkook chuckled, his gaze filled with meaning. "Of course, or do you want to delay it?" Quickly shaking her head, Yin felt her heart pounding wildly. There was no reason to refuse. After all, as his wife, she was supposed to be in his room from the start. Meanwhile, Mina giggled, watching Yin's flustered reaction. "Enjoy your first night sharing a bedroom with my brother, Yin," she teased. Yin lowered her head even further in embarrassment, while Jungkook simply smirked before tugging his wife's hand, leading her into their bedroom. As soon as the door closed, the atmosphere instantly changed. Jungkook's room felt larger and quieter compared to Mina's. The dim lighting added an intimate ambience, making Yin even more nervous. She stood awkwardly near the door. "You look tense." Jungkook's voice was soft, but Yin could sense something else behind his tone. She swallowed hard, avoiding his eyes. I'm just not used to this." Jungkook smirked slightly and took slow steps toward her. Each of his movements echoed in Yin's ears, making her heartbeat quicken. Instinctively, she retreated until her back pressed against the door. Jungkook noticed but didn't stop. Instead, he continued to approach. His hand lifted, gently touching her chin, tilting it up so she had no choice but to look at him. "I still remember it," Jungkook murmured, his voice deeper than before. Yin blinked, confused. "Remember what?" His smirk widened. "Our kiss in the storage room." His fingers slowly caressed her cheek, making her breath hitch. "I can't stop thinking about it." Yin's face instantly heated up. She remembered it too, how warm his lips were, how he kissed her as if he didn't want to let go, how his touch made her lose all control. But now, hearing Jungkook say it in such a husky, teasing tone only made her even more flustered. Yin tried to speak, but Jungkook leaned in closer, his breath brushing against her ear. "I want to continue," he whispered, sending a shiver down her spine. Yin's breath caught, her heartbeat wild, her fists clenched at her sides, unsure of how to react. She knew she had no reason to refuse. Jungkook was legally her husband, and truthfully, she was curious too. Unconsciously, her fingers clutched at her clothes, trying to steady the pounding in her chest. Her eyes locked with Jungkook's, filled with undeniable desire, making it even harder to breathe. "Can I kiss you again, hum?" Jungkook asked, his voice lower but oddly alluring to her. She fell silent, conflicted by her own emotions. But in the midst of her hesitation, she didn't realize, her fingers twitched slightly, as if giving the answer Jungkook had been waiting for. Unconsciously, Yin nodded. That was all Jungkook needed. Without hesitation, he closed the distance between them again, cupping Yin's face in both hands before his lips captured hers once more. This kiss was much deeper, more demanding. If Jungkook had held back before, this time he gave Yin no room to think. His lips moved with confidence, claiming every inch. Yin was startled when she felt something warm slip into her mouth, Jungkook's tongue. The sensation was unfamiliar and electrifying, making her body tense for a moment. But when Jungkook pulled her closer, one hand wrapping around her waist to keep her from pulling away, she found herself caught in the moment. Jungkook dominated effortlessly. She tried to keep up, but he remained in control. Without realizing it, Yin's hands clutched at his shoulders, searching for support as a whirlwind of emotions weakened her knees. Her heart pounded wildly as if it would burst from her chest. His fingers slowly trailed down her back, caressing her gently, as if trying to soothe her. When they finally ran out of breath, Jungkook reluctantly pulled away, though he kept his forehead pressed against hers. Their heavy breaths mingled in the heated air between them. Yin squeezed her eyes shut, trying to calm the frantic rhythm of her heartbeat. But how could she, when Jungkook was still holding her like this? The man chuckled softly, his voice husky. "You learn fast, hum," he murmured, his fingers gently brushing against Yin's flushed cheek. Yin didn't know what to say. She only lowered her head, her face growing even hotter. Jungkook, watching her reaction, merely smirked before pressing a lingering kiss to her temple. "We'll get used to this," he whispered, as if promising something more. After the kiss ended, Jungkook didn't immediately let go of Yin. His fingers continued to gently caress her back as if trying to soothe the lingering tremors. Their breaths were still heavy, mingling in the quiet room that now felt even warmer. Jungkook gazed deeply into her eyes, his dark orbs holding an unreadable emotion. Then, without saying a word, he took his wife's hand, intertwining their fingers tightly before leading her toward the bed. Yin swallowed hard, feeling even more nervous when her back finally met the soft mattress. Jungkook remained seated on the edge of the bed in front of her, watching her patiently, as if giving her time to adjust and feel comfortable. "You don't have to be afraid," he whispered, his fingers gently brushing against Yin's flushed cheek. "I will make sure you're okay." Yin bit her lip, her heart pounding even harder. She couldn't deny the nervousness bubbling inside her, but at the same time, there was something else, something warm that slowly melted away her awkwardness. Jungkook lowered his head, pressing a soft kiss on her forehead before whispering near her ear, "Trust me with everything, hum?" Yin could only nod slowly, though her body was still tense. Jungkook let out a small smile before capturing her lips once again, different from before. This time, his kiss was filled with patience, as if reassuring her that he would not hurt her. Gradually, the tension in Yin's body began to ease. Jungkook continued murmuring soft words near her ear, comforting her whenever he sensed her hesitation. He didn't rush, didn't force anything, simply allowing his wife to take her time. And when Yin finally relaxed and chose to close her eyes, surrendering herself to the moment, Jungkook knew that she had now placed her full trust in him. That night became a long one for both of them, a night where the boundaries between them disappeared completely. 3 hours later, the room still felt warm, with the dim lighting casting a soft glow. Their breaths had finally steadied after a long night. Jungkook lay beside Yin, his body still slightly damp with sweat, but his eyes remained fixed on his wife, who was now resting in his embrace. He gently tucked a few strands of hair away from Yin's face before gazing at her tenderly. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Yin still felt exhausted, but she gave a small nod. "I'm fine." Her voice was slightly hoarse. Jungkook let out a relieved sigh, though a hint of guilt flickered in his eyes. "I'm sorry, I got carried away. I know it must have hurt a little for you." Yin bit her lip, recalling the moment. There had been discomfort at first, but as time passed, she gradually adjusted, and seeing Jungkook being so attentive now made her feel much better. "I expected it, since it was my first time," she admitted honestly, "but it's okay." Jungkook gave a small smile before pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "It was my first time too. I'll be more careful next time," he promised. A comfortable silence settled between them after that. Jungkook pulled the blanket over their bodies, wrapping Yin in his warmth. They remained quiet for a while, until Jungkook finally spoke again. "Tomorrow, we're moving to my private mansion." Yin turned to him, not surprised, since he had already mentioned it back in the storage room. "Tomorrow?" Jungkook nodded. This house belongs to my family, but I want us to live somewhere more private, a place where we can be more comfortable as husband and wife." Yin stayed silent for a moment, processing his words. She knew they would have to move sooner or later. "Is it far from here?" she asked softly. "Not too far," Jungkook replied, "but far enough to give us our own space, without too much interference from my family." Yin understood what he meant. Even though they were married, Jungkook was still surrounded by his influential and dominant family. Moving into his private mansion might be the best decision, allowing them to grow closer without external pressures. "I'll prepare everything you need there," Jungkook added. "If there's anything you want, just let me know." Yin gave a small smile, still feeling a bit uneasy about the big change, but knowing that Jungkook had already thought things through made her feel more at ease. Alright, she finally said. I'll go with you. A satisfied smile appeared on Jungkook's lips as he pulled her closer into his embrace. Good, he murmured. Now, get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day. Yin nodded slowly, allowing Jungkook to hold her even tighter. Enveloped in his warmth, her eyes gradually fluttered shut. The next morning, Yin tried to walk normally, though her steps were still a bit stiff. She carefully sat down on the chair, trying to ignore the discomfort in her body. However, Mina, who was sitting across from her, noticed her movements with suspicion. Yin, why are you walking like that? She suddenly asked. Yin stiffened, almost dropping her spoon. Me, I'm fine, she quickly replied, trying to act normal. But Mina narrowed her eyes, not easily convinced. Seriously? You've been acting weird since you walked in. Jungkook, sitting beside Yin, only smirked, enjoying how his wife was struggling under his sister's scrutiny. He had no intention of helping at all. Mina examined Yin more closely, then her eyes widened as she noticed something. Yin, your face looks a little different today. And she leaned in slightly, observing Yin's neck. Is that? Yin immediately tensed up, hurriedly fixing her hair to cover the area in question. She had applied makeup to hide Jungkook's kiss marks, but it didn't seem to be entirely effective. Mina gasped, then looked at Jungkook with a knowing expression. Brother, you. Don't be noisy during breakfast, Jungkook casually interrupted while taking a sip of water. Mina stifled her laughter, while Yin grew more flustered, her face burning with embarrassment. She could only lower her head, focusing on her meal, even though she had already lost her appetite. Jungkook set his glass down and looked at Mina calmly. By the way, Yin and I are moving to our private mansion today. Mina, who was about to take a bite, stopped midway. Today? She asked, confirming. Jungkook nodded. Everything is ready. We'll leave after breakfast. Mina frowned. But brother, aren't you going to wait for mom and dad to come home first? They're still on a business trip, right? Jungkook shrugged. I called them this morning and informed them about it. They're fine with it. Mina let out a small sigh. Yeah, I figured they wouldn't oppose your decision, but still, this feels so sudden. Yin, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. I was surprised too when Jungkook told me we were moving today, but after thinking about it, I realized it's for the best. Mina looked at her, then gave a small smile. I understand. I just can't get used to the idea of this house without my brother. Jungkook smirked. I can still visit often if you miss me, or you can always come to see us. Mina scoffed. Looks like I'll be the one visiting you guys more. I want to see how Yin adjusts to your mansion. Yin gave a small smile, though deep inside, she felt a little nervous. After all, this would be her first time living alone with Jungkook. Mina glanced between the two of them with a teasing look. So brother, you really couldn't wait to live alone with Yin, huh? She teased. Yin, who was drinking water, almost choked, while Jungkook only smirked, not denying it. Of course. His shameless response made Yin's face heat up even more, while Mina laughed in satisfaction. Well then, I'll help you pack, Mina finally said. At least I want to make sure you're not only bringing your own things and forgetting about Yin's. Jungkook chuckled. I've prepared everything for Yin too, but if you want to help, I won't stop you. Mina grinned widely and stood up from her seat. Come on, Yin, she said, pulling Yin's hand. Yin wanted to protest, but she knew Mina wouldn't let her escape. Meanwhile, Jungkook just smiled at their interaction before finally getting up and following them. After their move to Jungkook's private mansion, their lives slowly returned to normal. Jungkook was busy with his mafia affairs, meetings with his subordinates, handling business transactions, and maintaining the stability of his organization. Meanwhile, Yin focused on building her boutique. With the help of her connections and her own hard work, the boutique slowly gained attention from customers. Despite being busy with their respective worlds, they still made time for each other. Jungkook always made sure to come home every night, even if it was late, and Yin would wait for him, at least to ensure her husband came home safely. However, 1 month later, something unexpected happened. That morning, Yin felt strange. As she woke up, her stomach churned, and before she could think further, she rushed to the bathroom and vomited. Her hands gripped the sink as her body felt weak. What's wrong with me? She murmured softly, staring at her pale reflection in the mirror. The past few days, she had often felt unwell, sometimes dizzy, sometimes weak, and her appetite had decreased. At first, she thought it was just exhaustion, but this time, it felt different. As her stomach churned again, she quickly checked her phone's calendar. Her eyes widened as she realized something. My period. Late. Her heart raced. With slightly trembling hands, she quickly searched for the pregnancy test she had kept in the bathroom drawer. After what felt like an eternity, she stared at the test, holding her breath. 2 red lines, pregnant. Yin stood frozen for a long time, her mind trying to process the reality she had just discovered. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the test tighter. She was pregnant, with Jungkook's child. A mix of emotions filled her chest. She wasn't sure how to react, shocked, anxious, happy, or scared. She had been so busy with her boutique, she had never really thought about having a child in the near future. And now, what should she do? How was she going to tell Jungkook? Yin took a deep breath, trying to calm the rapid beating of her heart. She couldn't panic. This had happened sooner than she expected, but that didn't necessarily mean it was a bad thing, right? Her mind began to search for reasons to stay calm. Jungkook would surely be happy, right? If not, why would he keep asking her to make love, even without protection? If he truly didn't want children, he would have done something to prevent it, whether it was telling her to take pills or at least discussing their plans for the future. But no, Jungkook had never asked her to take precautions. He had never said he didn't want kids. Jungkook rarely talked about their future, but from his actions, wasn't it clear enough that he didn't mind if Yin got pregnant? Yeah, it must be like that, she murmured softly, looking at the pregnancy test in her hand with a calmer feeling. After all, even though Jungkook was sometimes busy with his mafia business, he always treated her well. He might not be the most romantic man in the world, but he was caring and always made sure Yin felt comfortable. So, there was no reason for Yin to think negatively, right? She gave a small smile, trying to reassure herself. Jungkook would surely be happy. That night, Jungkook had just returned home. His face looked slightly tired, but as soon as he saw Yin waiting for him, a faint smile appeared on his lips. "You're still awake?" he asked as he took off his leather jacket and walked closer. Yin smiled softly. "I was waiting for you." Jungkook let out a small chuckle before pulling her by the waist and placing a light kiss on her lips. "You should have gone to bed earlier. I don't want you to be exhausted." Yin only smiled again without answering. She reached up to fix Jungkook's slightly messy hair, enjoying the warmth of his presence. Jungkook looked at her for a moment, and without warning, he kissed her again, this time deeper, more passionate. His hands slowly traced down her back, pulling her body closer to his. But before the kiss could escalate further, Yin gently pulled away. Jungkook frowned, confused by her reaction. "What's wrong?" he asked, looking at her with slight curiosity. It wasn't like her to refuse his kiss. Yin bit her lip, suddenly feeling nervous. She knew she had to tell Jungkook now, but still, a bit of anxiety lingered in her heart. "Jungkook," she called softly. Jungkook looked at her, waiting. Yin took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I have something to tell you." Hearing the serious tone in her voice, Jungkook immediately focused. He looked at Yin intently, waiting for her to continue. She squeezed his hand tightly before finally saying, I'm pregnant." Silence filled the room. Jungkook stood still, his expression unreadable, and that was enough to make Yin worry. She held his fingers tightly, afraid that his reaction wouldn't be what she had hoped for. "Jungkook," she called out softly, trying to read his thoughts. "Are you okay?" For a few seconds, Jungkook remained quiet, but then, the corners of his lips slowly lifted, and a small chuckle escaped his lips. Yin looked at him in confusion. "Why are you laughing?" Jungkook shook his head slightly, still smiling. "I just didn't expect this." His gaze returned to Yin's eyes, and this time, she could see the glimmer of happiness within them. "I'm going to be a father," he muttered as if trying to convince himself. And the more he said it, the more real it became. His smile widened before he finally pulled Yin into his embrace, holding her tightly. "I'm really happy," he whispered near her ear, making Yin finally let out a relieved sigh. Jungkook pulled away slightly just to look at her with pure affection before pressing a long kiss on her forehead. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "Thank you for bringing our child into this world." Yin smiled, feeling relieved and happy to see her husband's reaction before Jungkook hugged her once again. "If that's the case, you must not be exhausted, and you shouldn't be stressed," Jungkook said while gently stroking her hair. "I never feel exhausted, and I never get stressed," Yin replied softly. Jungkook smiled. "You will be if you keep waiting for me until 11 p.m. every night. Starting tomorrow, go to bed at 9 p.m. Yin pouted and pulled her head back slightly to look at her husband. "Why don't you just tell me to sleep at 8 p.m. like a kindergarten or elementary school kid, so I can wake up early for school?" Jungkook chuckled softly and didn't respond. Instead, his hand continued to stroke Yin's head gently. Alright, let's get ready for bed. Ever since learning that Yin was pregnant, Jungkook had truly become a more protective husband. He never directly spoke about it, but his actions made it clear that he wanted to ensure Yin's pregnancy went smoothly. He always paid close attention to her diet and health, making sure she wasn't overworked or distressed. Yin, who used to be busy managing her boutique, rarely visited it anymore, not because she didn't care, but because Jungkook closely monitored her activities. If it wasn't absolutely necessary, he preferred for Yin to stay home and rest. On rare occasions, she would still visit her boutique to check on things, but only briefly and always under supervision. If Jungkook himself couldn't accompany her, he made sure that one of his men was there to escort her. Even her sleeping schedule wasn't exempt from Jungkook's watchful eyes. Every night, if he was unable to come home on time, Jungkook would always call Yin precisely at 9 p.m. "Don't wait for me, go to sleep now." That sentence always left his lips whenever he had to work late. And even if Yin wasn't feeling sleepy, she still obeyed her husband, not out of fear, but because she knew he genuinely cared about her. Additionally, Jungkook always made sure that the mansion's maids kept an eye on Yin throughout the day. He instructed them to report if she seemed exhausted or if anything unusual happened regarding her health. Every morning before leaving for work, he never failed to remind them. "Make sure she eats on time, don't let her work too much. If she looks tired, tell her to rest. Inform me immediately if anything seems off." And the maids could only nod obediently, fully aware that Jungkook was absolutely serious about protecting his wife. One afternoon, Jungkook hurriedly opened the bedroom door, his eyes immediately searching for Yin. She had called him earlier, asking him to come home quickly because she was feeling dizzy. When he saw her sitting on the balcony, leaning weakly against the chair, his breath felt heavier. His expression was filled with worry. "Why are you here? Are you feeling better?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Yin turned to him slowly and gave a faint smile. "I just wanted to get some fresh air." Jungkook crouched in front of her, carefully observing her face. His hand reached up to touch her cheek, feeling that her skin was a bit colder than usual, probably from being outside for too long. "Are you still feeling dizzy?" Yin nodded slightly, a little, but not as bad as before. Jungkook sighed, clearly still uneasy. "You should be resting in bed. If you're not feeling well, why didn't you just lie down while waiting for me?" Yin gave him a small smile. "I just needed some fresh air." Jungkook gazed at her deeply before taking her hand in his, gently stroking the back of it. "Next time, if you feel unwell, tell me sooner. I'll come home right away." Yin looked at him warmly, touched by his concern. But before she could respond, Jungkook suddenly asked, his tone slightly more serious. "Have you eaten?" Yin hesitated for a moment, lowering her head slightly before replying softly, "Not yet." Jungkook's eyes darkened. "Not yet?" he repeated, his tone deepening. Before Yin could finish her sentence, Jungkook had already stood up, his expression turning to anger. He quickly stormed out of the room, his voice echoing through the house. "Maids, all of you, come here." His deep voice echoed throughout the mansion. Within seconds, the maids gathered with tense faces. "Why is it already 3 o'clock, and my wife hasn't eaten lunch yet?" he demanded sharply. One of the maids nervously stepped forward and stammered, "We tried to persuade Mrs. Yin to eat, but she refused, sir." Jungkook clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Then why didn't you call me? At the very least, you should have told me that she refused to eat." The maids lowered their heads, their bodies trembling. No one dared to respond. Before Jungkook could continue his outburst, the sound of soft footsteps was heard. Jungkook turned and saw Yin standing at the bedroom doorway. Her face was still pale, but she forced a small smile. "That's enough," she said gently, walking toward him. Jungkook looked at her sharply, still visibly upset. "They should have made sure you ate. It's their responsibility." "But it's not their fault," Yin said, holding Jungkook's hand to calm him down. "I refused to eat because I felt nauseous. They already tried, but I kept saying no." Jungkook stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, he turned his gaze to the maids, who were still standing in fear. "Leave," he said coldly. The maids quickly bowed and rushed away. Jungkook took a deep breath before looking at Yin again. "You need to eat, no matter what." Yin smiled softly, tugging his hand to lead him back inside. "All right, then stay with me while I eat." Jungkook was still upset with the maids. In fact, he still wanted to scold them, but he couldn't refuse his wife's request. With a heart still slightly heated, he followed Yin inside, determined to personally ensure that this time, she would eat. A few months later, happiness filled the hospital room. Yin and Jungkook's parents, along with Jungkook's younger sister, Mina, gathered with joyful expressions. In his grandmother's arms, their newborn baby boy slept peacefully, becoming the center of everyone's attention. However, for Jungkook, there was something far more important than joining in the excitement. He remained seated beside Yin's hospital bed, firmly holding her hand, the one without an IV. His eyes never left her face, which still looked exhausted after the long and strenuous labor. Jungkook didn't say much, but the way he held her hand gently, his thumb softly caressing the back of her hand, was more than enough to show how much he cared. "How are you feeling?" his deep, soft voice asked, meant only for Yin to hear. Yin gave a faint smile despite her weakness. "Tired, but I'm okay." Jungkook gazed at her deeply before leaning in slightly, placing a lingering kiss on her forehead, as if pouring all his emotions into that one gesture. "You were amazing," he murmured. "Thank you." Yin smiled, warmth spreading in her chest. At Jungkook's care, she glanced toward their family, who were still focused on the baby. "Don't you want to see our child?" she asked. Jungkook gave a small smile, still fixated on her. "I already did. Our baby is fine. They're giving him all the love he deserves. I just want to make sure you get the same attention." For a moment, Yin was speechless, touched by his words. She never expected Jungkook to be this calm and sincere in caring for her. Jungkook gently stroked the back of her hand. "I can't imagine what it feels like to give birth, but I know it must have been incredibly difficult for you. So for now, I just want you to rest and not worry about anything." Yin's smile softened. "You're truly a wonderful husband." Jungkook let out a quiet chuckle. "And you're an amazing wife." They shared a silent gaze, embracing the peaceful moment between them. What they didn't realize was that, from a distance, their family had been quietly watching their interaction all along. Exchanging knowing glances and smiles, they felt reassured, seeing just how well Jungkook was taking care of Yin.
But if you